The sliding glass door had barely opened halfway when a shout rang out like a slap in the refined air enveloping the lounge. "Hey, stop. Where do you think you're going? Do you know where this is? Get out before I call security." The entire lounge turned their heads almost in unison. The sound of a spoon stirring coffee stopped. A woman in a beige suit pushed her glasses down her nose. No one knew what was happening, but their eyes had already judged before understanding the context. In the middle of the carpeted hallway, at the gold line marked Royal Priority Guests Only, an older woman froze. Her hand was still on the door handle. A gray sweater, light gray pants, old but clean low heels. No makeup, no name tag. Just a calm gaze that, in this setting, was deemed insolent. The man who shouted stepped forward from inside. The lounge manager, Söken Timon. Dark blue suit, silk tie, gleaming watch. His tone shifted to calm but still carried the sneer of someone who didn't need to check a list. "Jetvale Logistics Department. This lounge doesn't serve night shift staff, ma'am." Without waiting for her reply, he turned to the security guard. "Hold her, Sir Manamon. I suspect a fake or borrowed card. We've had cases like this before." An older woman near the buffet whispered, "Dressed like that and trying to enter the first-class area? Maybe she found someone's lost card and thought she was invited." Another said, not bothering to lower their voice. She stood there. No reaction, no retreat. She only gently opened her purse. From it, she pulled out a small silver card, old, no barcode, no logo. At its center was an unusual hand-engraved symbol, a triangle within a circle. "Are you kidding me? This is supposed to get you into Royal Mayor spending." The guard raised his hand to block her. But at that moment, the scanner beeped, tink. The light turned green. The door opened. Everything froze. She didn't step inside, nor did she explain. "Where did you get that card? Who gave it to you?" She remained silent, but her gaze not directed at the one who insulted her, but looking through. Not to escape, but as if she had foreseen this and knew exactly who would appear when it happened. If one day you're humiliated in front of a crowd, but hold something they can't comprehend, would you fight back or stay silent, waiting for the right person to speak? Have you ever stayed silent in a moment when you should have spoken only because you thought no one would believe you? If this story touches something in you, leave a comment, just one line as a way to say what you've never dared to say. And follow Unveiled Wealth, where every silence carries an answer the world hasn't yet heard. And just when they thought she'd leave, her gaze stopped fixed on a man who had just entered the lounge. No one named him, but no one dared block his path. Because when the truly powerful enter in silence, the loudest are often the first to falter. The manager refused to accept her silence while she stood there. He wanted proof from those inside. "Ella!" he called loudly, his voice cold and clear as if for all to hear. "How long have you worked here? Almost 3 years. Right?" The young employee behind the service counter, pouring tea, looked up, her eyes wavering. She glanced at the woman, then back at the manager. "Have you ever seen this woman before? Is she on the guest list or senior staff?" Ella pursed her lips. Her hand still held the tray of cups, not yet set down. A brief pause, as if searching for the right words to stay uninvolved. "I'm not sure. I don't remember seeing her." "Thank you. That's enough." The manager nodded, looking around as if he'd scored a victory. Those nearby began turning back. Some pretended to check their phones. Others stared openly with annoyance and satisfaction. A middle-aged man muttered, "Thinks picking up a random card gets you a first-class seat." A woman in designer clothes, gold watch on her wrist, squinted and whispered to her friend. "Probably a former employee, maybe quit this morning and came back this afternoon playing VIP." Soft laughter spread like a thin blade grazing the skin. No one spoke loudly, but each word carried weight. And she still said nothing, just stood there, as if all this had happened before, as if she was used to others deciding her worth without asking who she was. The manager took another step. His face no longer feigned friendliness. He held a sheet of paper clipped to a sign-in board. "I won't waste more time. Sign here, confirm you won't return to the Royal Lounge from now on." White paper, black ink. The bold text above read, "Access denial record, internal regulation violation." He offered a pen, waiting. No second ask, but her hand stayed relaxed. And her gaze, no longer on him. It was directed elsewhere toward the glass wall, where a man had begun approaching, slowly, and very familiar. No reply. No resistance. She stood there, her eyes fixed beyond the glass, where the late afternoon light fell squarely on her steady shoulders. The manager grew impatient. I'm giving you a chance to handle this quietly. If you don't sign, I'll report the violation to the airport system. He tilted the board toward her, pointing to the bottom line sign here. No longer a request, it was an order. She lowered her head slightly, not to bow but to open her purse, not to take a pen but to put the silver card back, slowly. The zipper's sound was soft but distinct, like a door closing. She tucked the purse into her coat pocket, a deliberate move, neither rushed nor hesitant, as if she chose not to sign because it wasn't worth her existence. A group of guests by the door began murmuring. One raised a phone, filming side to side. She's acting, stirring drama to stall for pity. Maybe live streaming on TikTok might go viral tomorrow. Short laughs laced with disdain. A man tapped his spoon on his wine glass, shaking his head, never seen anyone so stubborn. But the strangest thing, no one dared approach. Not the guard, not the staff, not even the manager, though he still held the pen. She stood still, like an untouchable entity, though no one understood why. Then arrived from the other side of the lounge. Footsteps echoed. Slowy, Hanum. Firm, erted, decisive. No one looked immediately, but all felt it. The air in the room shifted slightly, like a boardroom door opening. She turned her head but wasn't surprised. The man approaching was someone every lounge staff recognized, but none dared speak to. The footsteps rang steadily across the cold stone floor. No one spoke, but chairs subtly shifted as he passed. Black suit, dark tie. No name tag. No introduction needed. Only the presence everyone felt he belonged here more than any of them. The manager's expression changed instantly. His hand lowered the sign-in board like a reflex. No one named the man, but everyone stood a little straighter. She, the woman, silent until now, only looked at him. No nod, no greeting. Just looked. Her gaze held no plea for help, no familiarity, but the presence of someone who knew this moment would come. Sorry, you are... The manager spoke, but didn't step forward. The man stopped, his eyes scanning the unsigned form. Then the woman. No answer. None needed. At that moment, a young bartender who had stood frozen until now suddenly blinked. She tilted her head, looked closely at the woman. Sibrinaus, I've seen her before. Her voice was soft, but in the thick silence it rang like faint thunder. When I worked at Royal Grand night shift, someone brought coffee to the 6th floor every 2 hours. Another voice chimed in. Wait, the 6th floor, isn't that off limits to regular staff? Exactly, the girl said. But she was allowed. I remember a loud argument in a late-night meeting room, and she was the only one security let in. The manager stiffened. His hand tightened on the board's edge. The pieces began to misalign, and the silent woman no longer seemed out of place. But as eyes turned to the man in black, no one dared ask him, You know who she is, don't you? He crossed the gold line of the restricted area without anyone checking his credentials. The guard glanced briefly, then stepped back. Another staff member hurriedly pulled out a chair, though he had no intent to sit. No one knew his position, but all saw clearly some authority needs no introduction. The manager took a breath but stayed still. No bow, serenimos, but no step forward either. The man stopped before the woman, one step apart. The ceiling light cast shadows on both their shoulders, as if all motion in the room slowed. No one spoke. No names were said, but every gaze shifted from her to him, and then it was she who turned away first. Not rushed, not awkward. Just a slight glance, as if enough to confirm you'll handle this your way. She didn't need to speak, nor thank him, for between them, there seemed to be something very old and never told. She doesn't need to sign anything. The statement rang out low, not raised, but as if pulling the ceiling down. The manager swallowed hard. No one dared ask, Who are you? Because that question, was no longer necessary. She stood there, her gaze fearless, unexpectant, just like someone waiting for what was meant to happen. No one spoke. No one moved. The man stood before her, hands relaxed, eyes still as cold stone under golden light. The distant murmurs faded. No one cared about the form anymore. No one filmed. Only them. She opened her purse again, but this time not defensive. Not to scan a card or prove anything, but as if returning an old memory to its rightful place. The silver card rested in her palm, smaller than a man's hand but heavier than words. Its surface scratched, edges slightly worn, but at its center was a strange symbol, a triangle within a circle, hand engraved. No logo, no name as Wameditinao, no printed authority. And perhaps that's why it was the most terrifying. The man didn't reach for it. He only looked. His eyes narrowed slightly, his right brow furrowed, the first sign since his arrival that this stirred a memory. She didn't speak, nor press. She just placed the card on the reception desk right in the center as she had once done before. The manager, a few steps away, swallowed again. He didn't know why, but the other man's hand paused midair, then withdrew. No one should hold this card, except 3 people. His voice low, almost to himself. A staff member behind muttered 3 people. No one answered. She looked at him, not as one asking, but as one waiting for his memory to awaken. The printer didn't stop. Nearly one in Royal Hotel, 6th floor. The meeting room door still lit, but empty. In the hallway, keyboard clicks came from an unattended computer. No one touched it. Internal spreadsheets, payrolls, share allocations, IPO plans scrolled line by line like a ghost. The IT shift ended at 10 p. No one reported a glitch. Only one person emerged from the emergency stairs, carrying a mop, a small cloth bag, and worn-heeled shoes. She opened the meeting room door. No warning lights, no alarms. Just the smell of hot paper and green screen light on white tiles. She didn't ask anyone, didn't call anyone. She just walked in, unplugged the power, stopped the printer, folded the scattered documents, slowly stacked them back in their folder. Then, locked the meeting room with a backup code entrusted to her by last year's night manager. 5 minutes later, the floor was clean. The hallway silent again. She wiped the door handle and continued as if nothing happened. And at that moment, the elevator opened. A young man in a sweat-soaked white shirt rushed out. She looked at him. He looked at her. You were in there. The meeting room wasn't locked. Brenwin, who told you to go in? No one? No one. He panted, glanced at the locked door, then back at her. What's your name? I work nights here. They call me the floor keeper. She turned away. But at the hallway's corner, he called out, You forgot this. She turned back. Not her bag, not her cleaning tools. A small silver card, pristine, unscratched. No explanation. Just one sentence. If a door ever denies you, show this. And now, 10 years later, that door had just opened itself. But those inside failed to recognize the one who once held it. If a small act of yours was forgotten, but it saved an entire system, would you speak up or wait for others to remember? Leave a comment. I, too, was forgotten. Don't forget to subscribe to Unveiled Wealth for stories of justice returning at the right moment. Sadly, not everyone is ready to remember, because at that moment the manager's voice rose again, no longer polite, no more laughter. Irwara Torrentinatsorn. No one nodded along. The room sank into an unfinished silence where everyone still breathed, still glanced, but no one dared speak otherwise. Not because they didn't see the anomaly, but because they weren't ready to cross the line between doubt and acknowledgement. She stood there, alone, in a space not meant for people like her, with dozens of eyes now shifting but still silent. Those who had filmed, who had demanded her expulsion, now waited for someone else to act first. The manager still held the form, but his hand was no longer steady as when he demanded her signature. His eyes darted, trying to maintain authority with a hoarser voice. I demand a full verification. Cameras, entry logs, guest records. This won't slide as if nothing happened. She didn't react, didn't resist, but her gaze had changed. No longer quiet as when she approached the door. No longer resigned as when told to leave. But the look of someone once treated as invisible, now watching a system panic because it could no longer deny her. Her hand lightly touched her collar button, adjusting it as if unthinking but deliberate. At the room's far end, the silver card still lay there, cold as dismissed evidence. The ceiling light hit the desk, glinting off the card's strange symbol, one no one here truly understood, except one person. And at that moment, as all stayed silent to avoid, a voice rose, small but clearer than any prior command. "You worked at Royal Grand, didn't you?" A simple sound, unintended, but it stopped the room mid-breath. And for the first time in this story, her eyes faintly stirred. The air cooled, but not comfortably. It was the tense silence of waiting for something to break, but not knowing who would break it. The man in the black suit, whom all silently knew was Senior, though unnamed, said nothing after the question. He only tilted his head, his eyes slowly scanning her face, then resting on the silver card still on the desk. Just a slight nod. No command, but no need to clarify. "Let me see that card again." A low voice came from behind the reception. Internal security had arrived, two men in dark gray shirts, name tags at their hips, one with a scanner, the other opening an internal tablet. They approached cautiously, as if handling evidence. She said nothing, just leaned slightly, placing the silver card on the desk's soft leather tray, her movement unwavering. The scanner passed once, no response. Twice, still no light. "Not in the standard guest card database," the first muttered. "No royal system code either. Maybe a voided card," the other guessed. "It's not voided," the man in black interrupted, his face unchanged. "Your system can't access that code level." The security men glanced at each other, then fell silent. Behind, some guests began to stir. No more laughter. No more phones raised. Only a new silence of those starting to suspect. They might have witnessed something wrong. The manager swallowed hard. He still held the form, but didn't know what to do with it. And then a different voice rose, from a veteran receptionist, and trembling but clear. "Wait, that symbol on the card, I think I saw it in the sixth-floor boardroom. The year Royal had that midnight power outage." Her whisper shifted the room's focus. All eyes on the card now turned toward the woman. "You were the night shift worker at Royal back then." The question came from a young employee, likely new, but sharp enough to sense she wasn't a stranger but part of a hallway memory. She didn't answer, but for the first time she gave a slight nod. Not quite confirmation, not quite agreement, just a faint acknowledgement for those keen enough to notice. The air began to shift, from caution to unease, from silence to fragmented whispers. "Wait, Royal had an internal scandal that year, right?" Someone said there was almost a leak of shareholder meeting documents. The sixth-floor boardroom had an unusual power cut. No media reported it. An older man near the wall nodded. "I remember that night. The hotel's entire system shut down for half an hour, but by morning, it was as if nothing happened." That was odd. The scattered pieces began to align. No one saw her as an intruder anymore. No one asked who she was, only tried to recall where they'd seen her. The manager stood rigid as stone. His hand still held the form but couldn't lift it. His mouth opened as if to justify, but he no longer knew which rule to use to expel someone like her from this place. She stood still. No attack. No opportunism. Just waiting. And then the man in the black suit finally spoke. His voice low and clear, looking at no one but her. "Messin Calderon." No one spoke for the next few seconds. Only the manager slowly lowered his gaze, as if that name had just struck through his entire authority. A name once erased from the system, but never from those who truly knew who held the final key to Royal. That name still echoed as the CEO stepped closer to the reception desk, where the silver card lay quietly like an object forgotten for 10 years, now returned to its rightful place. "Calderon," he repeated, slower, as if ensuring no one in the room could pretend not to hear. She didn't respond. But her gaze was no longer that of someone waiting for validation. It was the look of someone finally called by her rightful name in her rightful place in a space that once pushed her to the edge. No alarm needed, no anger required. He only placed his hand on the desk, beside the silver card, then turned it slightly, letting the ceiling light catch the hand-engraved symbol in its center. A symbol no one recognized. But he remembered. I know many here have never seen this card, and that's normal. His eyes swept over the manager, security, and receptionist. Because this card isn't mass-produced. It's not in the scanning system. It's not issued by position. A brief pause. This card is proof of special ownership. It represents those who laid the first foundations for the royal system you operate today. No one spoke. And this lounge where you just tried to kick her out is part of the assets she co-founded. A gasp came from the corner. A receptionist dropped her pen. The manager, in that moment, seemed to want to step back, but his feet were glued to the floor. No one asked, who is she? Because now, the scarier question was, who did we just treat like that? As she quietly leaned down, not to pick up the card, but to slide it toward him, the room fell into a different silence. No more doubt, no more skepticism, only shame with nowhere to hide. No one signaled, but everyone in the lounge began, shifting their posture. The woman with the gold watch who had smirked when security held her now stared into her glass, stirring melted ice as if seeking escape in the cloudy crystal. The young man who filmed earlier quietly turned off his screen, stuffed his phone in his pocket, and pretended to make a call on another. No one heard a ring. No one believed the call was real. A passing server brushed the table where the silver card lay and pulled back as if touching something sacred. Behind, an elderly guest whispered to his wife. She nodded but no longer looked at Miss Calderon. They knew, and they were ashamed for not knowing sooner. I'm truly sorry about earlier. The voice came from a corner of the neat-haired receptionist, hands clasped tightly. She didn't meet Mrs. Calderon's eyes only bowed slightly, apologizing for something she didn't decide but should have spoken against. The manager said nothing. The form he'd held was now folded, its edges crumpled as if his hands lacked the calm to keep it flat. He tried to maintain a neutral face, but his throat was dry, his eyes adrift. Mingeron. Calderon stood there, her hand lightly on the desk touching where the card had been. She didn't smile, didn't thank, didn't demand apologies. Because sometimes, the voluntary bow of those who once looked down is the clearest apology. In the lounge now thick with emotion, she only said softly, I didn't come here to be welcomed. I just wanted to see if this system still remembers who kept it standing. The manager froze. Security stood still. No one dared interrupt a story shedding its dust between two people needing no introduction. The man in the black suit, no longer just a powerful CEO, was a man in debt. Not money, but a promise never kept. He stepped closer, keeping a respectful distance. His eyes didn't linger on the card. They looked at the woman once called the floorkeeper. I promised. If Royal stood, you'd be part of it. Not under anyone's name. No need to report to the board. He paused, tilting his head as if recalling a buried detail. But that year, when we restructured security, it accidentally removed the special cards code from the access system. It didn't match any administrative ID. He turned to the receptionist, speaking softly. Not a technical error, but we chose to operate without room for trust outside the mold. A long breath, like folding an unfinished page. I know I should have acknowledged you publicly. Kept my word in time. But, he scanned the lounge, some heads bowed, some eyes averted. This place isn't always ready for those who contributed but lack status. His hand touched the desk's edge, where the card had lain. I didn't forget you, but I stayed silent too long. And that is what I'm most ashamed of. No one spoke. She didn't smile, but her gaze softened, not a mirror reflecting others' looks, but a wiped clean glass letting them see themselves. And as he continued, his voice nearly a whisper but heard by all, no one should have to stay silent to prove their worth. She looked at him, the man who'd given her the card, with a wordless nod. No resentment, No tears. Just the look of two people who've lived long enough to know some things, if proven by words, lose their value. No one stopped her as she stepped from the chairs. No applause, no proper sorry, just a path cleared willingly by those who mocked her less than half an hour ago. She didn't bow, nor raise her head triumphantly. She just passed each face, letting them feel their own reflected gaze. At the reception desk, where the card had been, she didn't take it. She only slid it lightly toward the man in black with her fingertips, then turned away. A small gesture, but firm, not returning it, but saying, "I no longer need this to enter anywhere." The young employee who'd whispered, "You work nights," right, stepped back, as if to follow. But she didn't turn. And those steps stopped because they knew not everyone needs to be restored to their rightful place. Some just need to leave quietly, intact. You don't need to shout to reclaim your place. Your presence makes others fall silent. If you've chosen silence over arguing and made a room reconsider you, leave a comment. Silence is strength. And subscribe to Unveiled Wealth, where such stories aren't just told, but felt. But justice never comes without scratches. In that now quiet room, some felt something in them break slowly, clearly. No internal memo, no public lesson, but everyone in that lounge knew who didn't return the next day. The manager who'd slammed the form down and called security like swatting trash was transferred from the elite lounge chain, not fired, just temporarily supporting remote operations. A polite way to leave the center of the confidence that led him to scorn. No one spoke of him further, because no one wanted to recall his commanding gaze when he forced a woman to sign away her place in a space she built with them. The young man who filmed holding his phone like chasing a viral joke was directly reprimanded by the ethics team. Not for filming, but for filming at the wrong time, with the wrong attitude, and posting in the wrong place. He deleted the clip before being asked. But his quiet removal of internal royal comments showed he knew there's no undo for attitude. The guard who first raised his hand to block her was terminated, not for breaking protocol, but because when trust builds a system, denying without reason cuts deepest. No meeting reviewed the fallout. No one reread the form. Just a small letter, left on the reception desk the next morning, no signature. Inside was the familiar silver card, neatly placed in a folded white envelope. No note. When the CEO's assistant brought it to him, he didn't open it. Just touched the envelope's edge, then pulled back. The envelope lay neatly on the dark wood desk, beside a packed meeting schedule and shareholder list printed that morning. No sender's name, no logo, no ribbon, just a white envelope, folded, slightly uneven as if by someone unaccustomed to it. The CEO looked at it, didn't touch it immediately, just looked. The room held only him and a rare silence for a man used to managing billion-dollar reports, expansions, growth strategies. But today, no charts appeared, just a card. When he finally opened the envelope, the paper rustled like a soft sigh. The silver card inside was unchanged. No new scratches, no dim shine at the symbol's edge. But this time, he didn't pick it up right away. His hand rested nearby, cautious, as if the object wasn't just a special access card, but a judging memory. He recalled the hand that placed it in hers, not from duty, but trust. Knowing if Royal stood, it was partly due to her silent presence. But he also recalled for 10 years he didn't mention it, didn't update, didn't acknowledge. And when she returned, the card was no longer in the system. Not a technical error. But because he let the system forget who kept it standing, he lowered his hand, didn't touch it. The card stayed bright enough that no one dared call it old. And for the first time as Royal Group's chairman, he faced a card he didn't dare keep, nor return. No spotlight, no grand speech. Royal Group's fall shareholder meeting was held in a triple soundproofed glass room, where every congratulation was spoken just loud enough, and every handshake carried more weight than it seemed. The CEO sat at the center. But this time, he wasn't the only one invited to speak. Among the new Ethics Oversight Board name tags, the third line read quietly, Marianne Calderon, independent advisor. No one clapped when her name was introduced. Not because they didn't want to, But because most in the room had heard the story, and those who heard needed no explanation, they didn't need lounge camera footage or internal reports. They only needed to see her entering the meeting room, still in a gray high-neck sweater, hair neatly pinned, steps even and straight, as if carrying the clear memory of the sixth-floor hallway. She said nothing in the first 15 minutes, just took notes, listened, watched each person, as if she'd been here before, only no one had truly seen her. The agenda manager was about to move on, but the CEO raised his hand lightly. Not to stop, just a gesture, as if he needed to add something to make it complete. Before we proceed, he said, eyes not leaving her notebook. I think we need to reiterate loyalty isn't written in contracts. It's in those who stay, even when the system rejects them. For the first time, Royal's shareholder room fell silent, not from fear of authority, but respect for someone once called not authorized to enter. No one left their seats. The meeting continued, but the air had changed. Questions about Singapore branch expansions, ESG strategies, or next quarter's growth were now asked with glances toward the table's left corner where she sat. Not because she was a finance expert, not because she'd been a department director, but because she'd heard Royal's every pulse from its lowest rung and never left. At the final minute, as the assistant stood to close the program, the CEO signaled briefly. He didn't stand, just spoke from his seat. I once thought leadership meant making quick, accurate decisions. But I realize some people don't need to decide anything. Their mere presence reveals every wrong choice. He turned to her formally this time. You don't need a board seat, nor my signing authority. But from today, I want every Royal Group department to know, if any issue of culture, ethics, or personnel doesn't consult Marianne Calderon, it's not a valid decision. The room fell silent. Not the silence of fearing power, but the silence when a statement resets the value of someone everyone overlooked but never truly saw. She taught me something no Harvard course mentions, nor any business school dares to. It's listen, even when the other says nothing. She didn't reply, just wrote one final line in her notebook. No one saw its contents. Only a faint smile of someone who knew a place isn't reclaimed. It returns when you're calm enough to observe. In the weeks after the shareholder meeting, Royal issued no press release, no ethics rebranding campaign, no PR piece titled The Woman Who Returned. Just a new internal policy sent quietly to every department. Personnel Ethics Consultation Process, code RCM. No one spoke when reading the last three letters, but no one dared skip that section. Staff were required to read and sign acknowledgement. In the notes, just one short quote. A right decision is one that holds when challenged by the lowest in the system. The man who filmed in the lounge now sat in an internal training session she led. He didn't meet her eyes as she entered, holding just a pen. She didn't mention the past, didn't name him, just began the session with, I won't ask what you've done. I only care if it happens again. How will you react this time? The lounge manager who'd thrust the form and called security attended a leadership culture reassessment. He sat in the back, silent. But at the end, as others left, she paused by his seat. I don't hold grudges, but Royal doesn't keep those afraid to remember. She walked away, not waiting for a response, leaving an air unlike past policy meetings, not forcing change, but not allowing anyone to pretend they didn't know their mistake. Forgiveness isn't letting go. It's being strong enough to return to the place that hurt you without needing any weapon. Winter Airport, light filtering through frosted glass. No silver card, no escort, no one opening doors. But this time, she didn't need any of that. A thin scarf around her neck, steps even not rushed, not slow. She passed the lounge from that day, its door still scanning cards as always. The new guard only nodded slightly. No one recognized her. Or maybe they did, but no one dared stop her. She paused by the window, watching planes taxi. Beside her, a herbal tea and a small, unopened document folder. No silver card. Just a handwritten line in blue ink. Silence is the test of who's truly listening. They thought she needed to speak to be recognized, but her calm presence made an entire system reflect on itself. If you've been rejected just for not looking like you belong, would you stay silent, leave, or stay to change everything by your presence? Share your story in the comments. Wasuman and Wurtsu. And subscribe to Unveiled Wealth, where every slight is a chance to prove worth without shouting. This story doesn't need an end because too many are still approaching doors told, this place isn't for you. The question is, next time, will you keep walking or stand still until others step back?